All right, guys, let me go ahead and share this to everyone who's on. Ooh, wow, that's terrible. I'm going to go ahead and share this to everyone who's currently online. I'll be right back. 1 second, we'll get started. Let's go to here. Okay, 8th. Let's see who's on with 7th. Okay, and I'll put it out to remind. I'm seeing a lot of people are not able to get onto it. It sucks. And 1 second. All right, guys. So let's go ahead. We're going to be looking today at what happens when people start moving away from the CBD, moving away from that central business district. As you've no doubt noticed in Baton Rouge, a lot of people are moving away from Baton Rouge proper, the entire city center of Baton Rouge, and they're moving out to other places, chiefly Livingston Parish, as well as Ascension Parish. Over the past couple of years, there's been a bit of a backlash because a group of people in Baton Rouge wanted to break off and form their own community called St. George. And there's still a lot of battles going on with that one as to who's actually going to be a part of St. George and who's not. So go ahead and go to Nearpod, use that code I've got there. And with that code, let me share a link for it. This is the English version. And copy. And you can go ahead and follow along with me as I'm doing this stuff. Today's course of events is going to be very similar to everything else we've been doing. However, you're going to be working today to get part 1 of a city planning project done. Now, in the olden golden days before coronavirus, we were actually able to get in touch, be in the room, and you'd actually be drawing out your city on paper and such. So I'm going to have to try to find a way to work around that one. I'm not too impressed with Nearpod's Draw It function. So I'm thinking I might try to find some way, if you have once you choose your sites towards the end with our project, I'm going to probably pull those up and have those available to you guys as Microsoft Paint or even Photoshop, where you can go in and actually change things and move it around on an actual map. I think that might help a little bit to definitely try to get you to the point where you actually know how to build a city. Because that's what we're building up to with this unit. You're going to be learning where things are placed in a city, why urbanization happens the way it happens, as well as why people move away from cities and into suburb areas. So that's all good, well and good, and that's where we're going towards the very end. Let me pull up some things over here. I've got a couple of notes on Go Guardian. Children Hold On to Your Dreams by William Wee Wee Howard. Okay, I see what you're doing there. All right. So I'll be apparently there's still some issues with this. Oh, hat. Yeah, it's a little bit better. Now I can do it in a British accent and be like a chimney sweep or something. Anyway. But anyway, it's better than I was originally wearing. I originally came on here wearing a gas mask, but I think that might be a little bit too on the nose. Anyway, here's where we go. So, on your Nearpod, the first thing is urbanization. In your opinion, what makes a good city? And I want you to list about 3 services, industries, or infrastructures that all cities need to have. And then imagine you're going to build a perfect city. What 3 services, industries, or infrastructures would you want your city to have? So 3 things that are needed and 3 things that you want. Go ahead and think about those, type them in, and submit. I'm currently seeing no one is online with Nearpod right now. That's kind of a downside of things. Let me go back and see if I can get more people onto this. Let's see. Chat. Send those out. Let's go to 7th. Heads up, I'd like to thank Serenity and looks like Serenity is online. Looks like McKinsey is online. Rabinia is online. Okay, good job. Thank you. Let's get a few more people on here. Looks like Mr. Dixon is online. Thank you, thank you. Angel is trying to get online. I see you there. Good job. Good jerb. All right. Okay, crew. So let's go ahead and move forward. So let's go to all devices. This slide contains a video. So I want you to listen to this song I'm posting on here, and describe 3 stereotypes generally associated with the suburbs as listed in this song, Pleasant Valley Sunday. I'm going to play it briefly. I have to mute my computer while it plays because Lord knows YouTube wants to go crazy and shut everything down on me. So here we go. I'm going to mute my video. I'm going to play the song. You can go ahead and listen to it as well. And you guys can feel free to go ahead and post that as you're listening to it. What are some of the stereotypes of living in the suburbs? All right, let's go to third hour. All right. So it looks like our song is just about done for the next few seconds. So Pleasant Valley Sunday, they talk about a bunch of different things in there that are associated with the suburbs. So I want you to think about 3 things that they mention when it comes to suburbs. So life in the suburbs, suburban living. Live in the suburbs. There's home, garden, and sunshine. So for the next couple of slides, you're going to be seeing a couple of different images as to what life in the suburbs actually look like. Turn my volume back on.
Suburban living.
Interesting. Let's go back to the slide. So our first one says, it's a promise. There's a man in military army uniform, his girlfriend or wife next to him, and he's drawing out a picture of what their dream house was going to look like. So this is our first glimpse at suburban living. The suburbs popped up after World War II. All of a sudden, the United States was at this, apex of commercialism. The war was over. People were feeling good. They were actually getting a lot more money, more jobs opening up. They were actually wanting to pull this one up on here. Try another device or wait until Google Classroom. All right. So World War II was over. People were coming home. There was a boom in jobs, boom in marriages, boom in babies. The infamous baby boom happens. People get married, start having families. And of course, the big promise is having that nice, quiet house with a picket fence and the nice yard, all that stuff. However, people want to move away from the cities. Back in the 1930s, if you weren't living on the city, you were out in the rural areas. You were a farmer. City or farm, there was nothing in between. After World War II, though, we get the suburbs. People wanted to be in the outside of the city, but they didn't want to be on the farm. And the suburbs was a little bit of a nice mix. And naturally, all these different companies like General Electric, Westinghouse, a couple other different companies, GE and Westinghouse are going to be two of the big ones. They start pushing to start building in these areas outside of the city, but not quite on the farm. So this is what suburban life would have looked like. Riding lawnmowers come into existence. That is what the first riding lawnmower actually looked like. Kind of like a miniature tractor. They took a basic tractor, they shrunk it down, and lo and behold, there's your first lawnmower. Very neat, very clean, these pictures are very happy. They're trying to sell you this image of what the suburbs actually look like or could look like. Here's the next one. This is Garlinghouse, ranch and suburban homes. Another picture of what the suburbs could look like. Yeah, this one's a little bit more country. As you can see, if you look closely at the bottom, instead of cars on the road, you've got a couple of people riding horses. And these ranch-style homes, white picket fence in the front. One of the things to note is that they're not on top of each other. So that's going to be a big issue that ends up changing as suburbs start growing, is that eventually you're going to get houses that are essentially going to be built right on top of the next. And we get massive subdivisions, and you'll see that one in a second. Now, students, this third one right here is, in fact, a Philip Morris cigarette ad. But let's not look at the cigarettes here. I'm not trying to promote you guys to smoke, of course, because, smoking is very bad for your health. It will give you lung cancer and will probably kill you. But let's look at the situation around there. Let's ignore the cigarettes and ignore the woman who is staring in shock or awe that there's these great cigarettes here. But look in the back. You've got this really well-maintained yard. You've got a barbecue pit, so the first outdoor kitchen being built, or rather, it's already built. And as you can see, the guy's got something on the grill back there, cooking it outside. They're having a bit of a picnic. There's another fellow on the far right slicing up. He's got his watermelon and iced tea for dessert. Yay. A woman in a pink dress towards the left. She's obviously having fun. She's talking about something, holding a glass of tea. So things are pretty good. This is what the suburbs has to offer you. You're getting away from the hustle and bustle of the city and living a little bit more relaxed. Once again, more relaxation. This is an ad for Pepsi back in, I believe this one was in 1958. So you can tell it's the late 50s, early 60s because, well, this woman is showing her ankles. In the heyday of the 1950s, dresses were the big thing. So you can see there's definitely a difference between that Philip Morris ad and the Pepsi ad. Things are a little bit more laid back. Notice everything's kind of in pink here. Once again, outdoor kitchen. The guy's got barbecue tongs or barbecue meat hook in his hand. And if you look closely at the back, it says, "Stay up to date and so smart." And you're seeing there's actually smoke coming off this outdoor kitchen barbecue pit. And this two people here, but notice the woman's got a glass of Pepsi, and she's also got 3 bottles of Pepsi. So I don't know if that's all for her, but good luck to her if that is. All right, next one. A bold new plan for the best land use. Here's where we get to the super subdivisions. More livable homes, row houses, give indoor spaciousness, outdoor privacy, and even a park. Now, once this happens, we start seeing the spread of major subdivisions. There might be maybe 2 or 3 different types of houses, models, but then they build those same 2 or 3 for an entire space area. You see this a lot when it comes to subdivisions nowadays. In fact, one of the reasons I hate subdivisions is that once you go into one, all the houses look roughly the same. And it drives me crazy trying to find an address. And especially in the subdivisions have all the mailboxes on one side of the road and not the other. Because I'm trying to go find this address and every single house looks the exact same. I hate it. So who's to blame for all this? Well, we'll get to that in a second. So here's your thing. What are these pictures showing? What do they have in common? And what message were those pictures trying to project? You can go ahead and pause the video here for those of you not watching live. Go ahead and pause it here, answer the question, and we'll move on in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So, where did these suburbs come from? And our answer is urban expansion. As these cities start growing, you see people want to move away from those city centers. Now, the first thing that starts growing is called conurbation. And that's when these cities grow to the point where they start meeting other cities. And this is how we form megalopolises. My favorite example, I'll always use this one, is Chicago. The main city of Chicago is actually not that big. That downtown central business area, you could walk across it in maybe about 25 to 30 minutes. However, there are other parts of the area that connected to Chicago, other cities. For example, in Indiana, you have East Chicago. Then you have Gary, Indiana, which was the childhood home of Michael Jackson. North of Chicago, you get a place like Evanston, Illinois. You've got Highland Park. You've got North Chicago. Even to a degree, some people would even consider parts of Milwaukee as part of this Chicago megalopolis. I don't know how much I'd agree with them, because there's a lot of smaller areas and there's a pretty big distance between places like North Chicago and Milwaukee. However, some people do. Some geographers do look at this and say, hey, you know what? Milwaukee, Chicago, megalopolis. I can't totally fault them, but I, at the same time, don't necessarily agree with that assessment. But places North Chicago, Evanston, Gary, Indiana, East Chicago, Indiana, definitely. So here's how it happens. We have a chart called a density gradient. And with that density gradient, we're going to be charting how people are moving away from a city. This is actually slide number 13. So we chart how the population density changes in that city. And historically, more people have lived in the center of the city. But as you can see here, over the 20th century, from 1900 to 1990, 1900, 1930, 1960, and 1990, that population density changes. People start moving away from that center. So in this case, what are we seeing? This is Cleveland, Ohio. You can actually click on, you'll get a much bigger picture of it so you can actually analyze it a little bit. So what are we seeing here with the Cleveland, Ohio, and what happens to its population density? Naturally, you should be saying that the population density moves away from the center. As you can see, by 1990, the density has moved out to these suburb areas, and the center of the city itself, right on Lake Erie, that city center, is essentially has the same density as those outward areas back in the early 1900s. So our question here is why? So what are some reasons why we're seeing this? Because when people move out of the city, they still want to be close enough to the city that they can have their essential needs met. Essential services can also be met. Jobs are available. So they build areas to live that are close to the city, but not too close. And here's where you have these two guys, William and Alfred Levitt. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn my sound off so YouTube doesn't get me. And we're going to play this video starting in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward. Turn my volume back on. So there are essentially three types of suburbs, and for this AP test, which by the way is still happening, however it's going to be done at home, it's only going to be 45 minutes and it's going to be written response. There are three types of suburbs, and you should know each one. The first type is called the edge city. It's an independent settlement built near a big city, essentially on the edge of the map. A couple examples of this are in the Baton Rouge area would be places like Baker, Zachary, Central. It's right on the edge of Baton Rouge. However, they're independent of Baton Rouge. However, they are independent, but they still depend on Baton Rouge's economy and such. We have the annexation, which is a legal process of adding land to a city, as well as the land that's being added. We currently see this happening with places like St. George. As St. George broke away from Baton Rouge said, no, we're going to annex some places in there to come back into Baton Rouge and be part of our city. Our third type is called sprawl. That's this progressive spread of development over land. This is happening a lot in places outside of Baton Rouge, like in Livingston and Ascension Parish. More developers are coming in and building new subdivisions in rural areas and not inside the city limits. So we end up seeing just sprawling subdivisions popping up everywhere. As someone who lives in Livingston Parish, it's kind of a headache because, well, my family chose this place back in the 1930s when my grandfather came here, great-grandfather, and he bought this land to build his farm on, and lo and behold, we've got these different subdivisions popping up. Sad to say, my grandfather knew what he was looking for when he looked at land. He understood land. In the case of these people who are moving in, these developers, they don't look at the land. And as a result, back in the 2016 flood, this farm my grandfather bought back in the 1930s, the flood only came up about to our ankles. However, the people living maybe a half mile down the road in a known floodplain, they had water up to their roof lines. So it's all where you build, and a lot of developers don't take that into consideration. Forward. So what are some possible problems that would arise from annexation and urban sprawl? If you're doing this on your own, you can go ahead and pause the video now, and we're going to move on. Make sure you get that one answered. So here's some information you'll need to know. Wealthier families move out of their old homes in the city, and they'll move to new ones in the suburbs. And in the city, poorer families move into the old homes that are in the city because once they're old, they're kind of outdated, their value drops. And for poorer families, they can't really afford the greatest, latest thing. So they're having to be stuck with these older homes. So when the population retreats from that central business district of downtown, businesses start to follow suit. This is actually happening a lot, especially with downtown Baton Rouge. So many people were moving away from downtown that for about 30 years, there was just this downward trend when it came to all these businesses downtown. Places like Godchall's, which was a Louisiana based department store, used to be the place to go. Maison Blanche was another Louisiana based department store that based out of New Orleans. Those were all places in downtown Baton Rouge. In fact, there's one building, I don't know if it's still there. I think it's turned into the Holiday Inn in downtown Baton Rouge. And for the longest time, it had this large clock on it back in the 1960s when it was first built as this department store. I believe that was Maison Blanche originally, but Maison Blanche went out of business. Partly, well, that site went out of business because they built Cortana Mall. And Maison Blanche closed its stores there and moved to Cortana Mall. It's in the suburbs. Cortana, Goodwood, those areas, that's suburbs. So the businesses followed suit. And the result was a cycle of poverty. Now, the good news is, in Baton Rouge's case, thanks to some major renovations, we've actually been seeing downtown Baton Rouge coming back. We have the historic districts, such as the Old State Capitol. You've got parades like Spanish Town. And you also have these new restaurants popping up. And they've, over the past 20 years or so, I mean, when I was your age, 25 years ago, no one would ever go to downtown Baton Rouge. It was a crap hole. Pardon my French, but it really was a crap hole. There was nothing there but a bunch of boarded up areas, maybe a couple of bars. However, over the past 20 years with the redevelopment, we've actually been seeing a lot of business coming back. A lot of people go to Baton Rouge on a Friday night. Hey, until this coronavirus hit. But hey, it's now the thing to do. We have new attractions there. 13th Gate Escape. We've got a couple other things that are going up. We've got the Hilton Baton Rouge opened up. And whenever there's something big happening, conferences and such, Raising Cane's bought the Baton Rouge River Center, and they've been turning it into a major venue for big events, concerts and such. When I was growing up, it was the Baton Rouge River Center. Before that, the Baton Rouge Centralplex. We had a hockey team. Needless to say, hockey in Louisiana doesn't really go over very well. And after 1 or 2 years of really poor ticket sales, they ended up leaving Baton Rouge. I think they went to Canada, moved the team. So our result is, unless you do something like Baton Rouge did, you get a cycle of poverty. And now, sad to say, that same cycle is starting to hit the suburbs. I'm going to mute my screen here, and we're going to watch this video. Okay, everyone. Oh, goodness. This isn't going to work. Yeah. All right. So, with the suburbs, we have a problem, a downside. Not just we have that cycle of poverty, but we also have more suburbs, meaning we lose a lot of green space. A lot of farmland is going to build these subdivisions. Uh, if you ever saw the movie, it says "Think Over the Hedge" here. If you ever saw the movie Over the Hedge cartoon from like 2006, where they build this brand new subdivision, all the animals are trying to get food from the subdivision while trying to avoid the people. Same thing happened. We lose a lot of green space and a lot of farmland for these new suburbs. Now, over our cousins in the United Kingdom, they actually came up with a solution, and I like this solution. It's called the Green Belt. What the UK does is, in between their city and their suburbs, they actually have a ring of green space around the city. So in the map you're seeing on your screen here, we have Nottinghamshire, also known as Nottingham. Hint, hint, if you're into Robin Hood, sounds familiar. So from Nottingham, before you get to the suburbs, you have this large green area, green space. Those are places where there's farmland, or maybe there's forested areas. They do not touch it. And then they build the suburbs on the other side of these farmland areas. This is part of what they call a smart growth initiative. They passed regulation to manage suburban sprawl in order to maintain and preserve these rural lands and forest lands. Keep that green space. To tell you the truth, I think green space is one of the things that causes people to be severely, or rather, the lack of green space causes people to kind of go nuts. We humans are social creatures. We're also natural creatures. And as a result, if you have someone who's got nothing but city life around them and people living on top of each other in these suburbs, they're going to start to kind of lose things a little bit, lose their minds. I'm willing to wager, 9 times out of 10, I'm willing to wager this one, that this is the reason why we don't have the same type of mental health problems in Europe, or at least in the United Kingdom, as we do in the United States, because they're actually working to preserve this green space. All right. So in that respect, the next slide is going to take you to an Edpuzzle video. You're going to have 10 minutes. I'll set the timer for 10 minutes to watch the video, and you're going to complete the questions. There are 2 multiple choice questions and 3 constructor responses. I want you to pay attention to what this guy is saying about rethinking and redesigning big city apartments to try to get more people living in cities, and also trying to get the cities to be a little bit better for everyone involved. So I want you to think about what he says and how do his ideas match your ideas of a perfect city. So here we go. Going into this one, I'm going to give you guys 10 minutes. I'm seeing that no one's logged in right now, so you'll have time to do this on your own. But here's our last thing. So make sure you're getting that done. I've already posted on Google Classroom, Edpuzzle. It's there. Go ahead and get it done. But here's your exit ticket for the day. This has also been, I just uploaded a few minutes ago to Google Classroom for you to do as soon as possible. I want you to think about all the things that are required for a perfect city. Now you're going to go ahead and start planning that city. So if you go to Google Classroom now, you should be seeing it on there. It says Urban Planning Project Part 1. I'll pull open my copy of it right here. So your first order of business is to choose one of these areas to build your city. I've given you a set of coordinates, and I went ahead and looked through as to where these coordinates are. 2 of them are on islands. So someone might be living it up with some island living, got a coconut in one hand and palm trees on the other. You'll see. I've got a couple places that are forested areas, got a couple places that are deserts. So you're going to choose one of these 10 places. And this is where you're going to be building your city. Now, the good news is if you go to Google Maps and you copy these coordinates right here, let's say 32.2422 north and 35.5672 east, that's going to put you in a certain area. You can actually copy that into your browser, find it on Google Maps, it'll take you right to that point. So once you've chosen your city, your place, I want you to give your city a name. P.S. Keep it school appropriate. I cannot stress this enough because the stuff you're doing in here for me actually gets shared out to all your other teachers, as well as Mr. Sampson. If you put something on there that's inappropriate, he's going to see it, and you're going to have to talk to him about it. So the name of your city. So Mizell, I see you're watching us here. Mizell, if you are going to write this one, you could call it Mizell Town. I know it's not very imaginative, but come up with a name for the city. You can name it after yourself, after your dog, what have you. Just keep it school appropriate. One year I did this, and good Lord, someone decided to name their town Hooterville. And I said, no. And they said, but it's because it's got a bunch of owls around there. I'm like, no, you're not naming it Hooterville. Even if it was the name of the town on Green Acres, you're not doing it. So keep it school appropriate. PG, please. Number 2, what is the geography around your area? I want you to describe the environment. Once you've chosen one of your sites to build the city, one of those coordinates, and found your area, what's the geography like? Is it desert? Is it forest? Is it jungle? What is it? Number 3, is it near water? Are there any islands around? So that's going to be a good question for you because a couple of these places are in fact islands. I designed it that way. Number 4, what is the topography like? What are these landforms around you? Has it got mountains? Does it have hills, plains? What? Now, number 5 is a little bit different because you're going to have to do a little research on there. What is the weather like in these areas? So there's a couple of sites you can look up the area on Google and try to find out what the weather is generally like. Or you can also find out through AccuWeather.com. AccuWeather keeps weather records for the past 100 years. So you can see what the long-term weather and climate's like in that area. Number 6, what kind of primary sector activities would be happening in and around this city? So primary sector activities are going to be natural resources, farming, mining, that sort of thing. You're working directly with those natural resources. Number 7 asks for secondary sector activities. That's going to be your manufacturing and processing because you can grow cotton. That's your primary sector activity, cotton farming. But secondary is going to be you have a textile plant and you put that cotton through there and you weave that cotton into cloth. And then number 8 is tertiary sector activities. That's going to be the service industry. So let's use cotton for our example. So primary sector, grow cotton, farming cotton. Secondary would be manufacturing. You're turning that cotton into cloth, processing it. And tertiary is going to be the service industry. You're a retail shop. You buy the cotton from that secondary sector. And with your tertiary sector, you're going to be designing that cotton into clothing. Maybe you're making jackets one day. Maybe you're making women's skirts the next day. Maybe you're Scottish and you want to build kilts the next day after that. You can do that. So once you're done with that one, I want you to look at some of these required economic activities. So by the end of the simulation, I'm going to try to find a way to get you guys to actually draw this on a map. You're going to need to have all the following. 1 mall. You're going to need apartment buildings for all the people moving into this area. You're going to need a suburb neighborhood. So you're going to need the central business district as well as a suburb area. I want you to try for 11 restaurants or bars. movie theaters, fire departments necessary, police departments necessary. City Hall, that's going to be your capital of your city. That's going to be where all your city's business takes place. Green space or parks, I want a minimum of 3 on there. You're going to need at least one waste disposal area. It could be a landfill, it could be a recycling center. But you have to find a way. If you have people moving into your city, you need to deal with the garbage somehow because people produce garbage a lot. You're also going to need a power plant. Maybe you want coal, maybe natural gas. If you're living in an area with a big island area and not a lot of room, you might not want a nuclear plant, but you might want to look at possibly solar or wind. You're going to need schools. Try for a minimum of 4 schools. You're going to I want you to try for a university. University, I can take it or leave it because not all cities have a university. Baton Rouge is lucky enough to have 2 universities and a college, which are LSU, Southern, and BRCC. Other places don't have any universities at all. Case in point, I think all the big ones do. I don't think Biloxi has one. Low-income housing, because there are going to be low-income people, poor people, destitute in your city. So you're going to need to find a way to provide for them. Office complexes are good to have because you're going to need for your commerce to grow. Post office, definitely a necessity. In fact, one of the islands on here actually has a place called Post Office Bay on it. There's nothing built there as of yet, but hey, Post Office Bay is there. So maybe you want to put the post office there. Library. A jail. If you're going to have a police department, you might as well have a jail. It could be something big. It could be something small, depending on what your population needs. Places of worship. Try for a minimum of 3 places of worship. Clean water, because Lord knows you do need clean water, which is going to be a water treatment plant. If you don't have fresh water available, if you're on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, cough, cough, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you're going to need a desalinization plant. What that does is it kind of pulls in, sucks in the seawater, and it takes the salt out of it and makes it drinkable. You're going to need transportation. So roads, highways, do you have buses, city buses? Do you have rails, city trolleys, subways? You might want to also build a port, maybe an airport, maybe a seaport. If you're on an island, you might want to try for one of the two. To tell you the truth, I think on an island, a seaport might be a little bit easier to deal with. And lastly, a hospital. For your city, I would like you to build one hospital for every 100,000 people. Then lastly, you've got 3 basic industries and 3 non-basic industries. Basic industries are going to be large and small businesses that sell primarily to external customers. So non-basic industries are going to be small businesses that sell to locals. So you're going to need something to, let's say, basic industry. If you're growing cotton on your area, on your city, you're going to need to have cotton as a basic industry because that's going to be selling stuff to other places outside other cities. Non-basic industries are going to be small shops that cater just to your own people. So to start this off, I want you to come up with 3 basic industries and 3 non-basic for your people. All right, guys, so that's kind of where we're going to end today. I'll have all this posted on Google Classroom, including today's live stream, since thankfully YouTube did not shut me down, so I can save this and put it out there. And you'll also have everything you need to do that city planning project part 1. I will, once we get to part 2 on there, I will have kind of map set up, and I'll have those available to you so you can open them up on maybe PowerPoint not PowerPoint, like Photoshop or Microsoft Paint, and you can actually go ahead and start planning your city on that area. All right, so that's where we're going to end today. I'll have this posted on Google Classroom for you guys. It'll actually be under Nearpod, that Nearpod link. Oh, it's terrible. I'm just going to go ahead and shave all this off, I think. I don't know. But anyway, you have all that together, all that to be done. Get it done as soon as you can, and I will see you guys Monday. Next live stream is Monday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. See you then.